Sorry for the hold up.
This is our student panel. Fatima from Georgetown, she'll be moderating. So I'm going to get off the screen so that she can have this amazing conversation with these amazing individuals. And I will check back in soon. Thank you all for being here.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the student panel. As Erica said, I'm Fatima. I'm a rising senior at Georgetown University, studying like theater and African American studies in the college. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our panelists, but hopefully through the first question, you'll get to know them a little bit. But the first panelist we have, who's an undergraduate student at Gosher College, Chris Darby, a PhD student at Pittsburgh University, Jordan Thompson, a master's student at the University of Florida, and Andrea Constant, a PhD student at Syracuse University. So the first question I have for you guys, and this is going to give everyone kind of an idea of like who you are, the school you go to. Why did you choose the institution that you went to, and what has been like the biggest thing that you could take from that experience?
I can kick us off. Oh, whoever wants to.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just wrapped my program, and I think I chose that institution specifically because I followed the money. Going into higher education or student affairs, rather, you want to make it as cost effective as possible. And for a good part, that worked out. And then reflecting on it, I think maybe you shouldn't choose the institution that offers you the best money every time, because sometimes there are some factors that you have to consider to make your experience what it should be and not what you're afforded or what is presented by the best financial option. So I've learned to look beyond the offer and kind of look at the details and the structure of the institution and the history of that institution that I choose.
I'll go next. I chose my institution, Syracuse, because they also offered me the best financial package out of my offers. It's not too far away from home. I'm originally from Maryland, so it's only about 5.5 hours away. And the option to be very interdisciplinary in my studies. And so I work with faculty in other departments such as Women and Gender Studies or African American Studies. And it just helps me shape my research in different ways than if I was just nestled within sociology.
I would say for myself, since I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, like the university was always like right down the street. My middle school was across the street from Pitt, but there was never any want or any aspirations to actually go to Pitt. So actually applying and being accepted to Pitt was kind of like an accident, to be honest, if I'm just going to be realistic, only because I was working in the space through a fellowship in which the space was just so comfortable and offered so much that, you know, I wanted to stay a part of it, but I just didn't know how because it was only a 1-year fellowship. So the only way I could stay in the space was to keep pursuing an education, which I was very indifferent about, but the space kind of offered so much that it was hard to say no, and you kind of knew what you were going to get there. So choosing Pitt, I guess it kind of chose me in some ways, as to where not wanting to be in another graduate program because I had just finished my master's degree and then going straight into a PhD program. It was like, this is an accident, but I'm loving it.
Thank you. And Joshua?
I chose Goucher because there was the financial aid benefit, which was probably the strongest of all the schools that I applied for, but it was also a matter of a small liberal arts college that I wanted to go to that focused on disciplines that I was really interested in, or in a strong suit were those disciplines, but also the fact that there are certain programs in place, like a study abroad program, that gave me the impression that they demonstrated a genuine ability to nurture students out of their comfort zones, and that kind of just attracted me to the college.
Got you. Thank you guys for sharing. So I'm hearing money was one of the big reasons that you guys was picking the schools you went to. And then another is that community that was being built. So I know that with community is really important that there are boundaries, there are guidelines, there are rules. So how did you feel as though your institution was doing, how good of a job would you say your institution was doing towards building how your communities that you were living in, whether that be like residential, academic, how they're cultivating a safe and inclusive community, considering y'all are Black and multifaceted as it relates to your identities?
I'll say university as a whole. I mean, yeah, the university as a whole does something. It's not enough. Where my program is housed, it's in the School of Education, and it's specifically through the Center for Urban Education, which is kind of like its own entity in itself within the School of Ed. So the community that we have in that space is wonderful. It's almost like Wakanda at the university. I'm so serious. It's like we have our own floor, we have our own space, all the faculty within the Center for Urban Ed are Black. So it's like this weird dynamic that a lot of other institutions don't have. So, and recently, I think about 3 years ago, the university just hired the dean of the School of Education, Dean Valerie Kinlock, the first Black woman to ever be a dean at the University of Pittsburgh. So she's done an amazing job with like coming in and like saying, look, we're changing everything. Like there's work that needs to be done. So the School of Education, I will say, is on the right track. It's definitely going to take some time because changing a culture is a difficult task that takes years to do. The university as a whole, they're probably a couple steps behind, but it's what to be expected when you're at a predominantly white university.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I like, thank you for mentioning like the actual players in the game, because I think sometimes we forget like where that actual labor takes place to make changes. So yeah, anyone else would like to share?
Begin by speaking about this. I'm entering my second year here, so obviously I just finished my first year, and it was a very interesting but tiring year as a Black student on this campus, especially, as a first year Black student on this campus. I mean, for a good 2/3 of the school year and only limited by like Thanksgiving break and then COVID, we had mass protests on campus, occupations that lasted almost 30 days. And it was really saddening to see the extent to which Black students, but other minoritized students had to go to just to get their words heard, but also their demands enacted. And, we're still going through that type of murky water environment here. And, there's been things going on in different departments, and hopefully I can just only be optimistic and say that, people's actions match their words this upcoming year, and that, those who have been in spots where they are either traumatizing or harming Black students on this campus, that they put, their money where their mouth is, and then, really stick to what statements they're writing and everything else. So like I said, I want to stay optimistic and everything, but it's been very hard as a Black student on this campus, if I'm being honest.
Okay. For perspective, do undergraduate students and graduate students live in community together for the most part?
So the apartment building I live in, graduate students and undergrads live together, but a lot of us that graduate students are really spaced out around Syracuse as well, or if they live on campus housing that's like kind of distance from campus, it's a grad area. But I just joined the board for the Black Graduate Student Association, and I'm the internal community outreach chair. And so I'm trying to reach out to the undergrad populations, but also, graduate organizations to merge them together. And, we've created like a group meet for Black students here and everything, because we noticed that there was a lack of communication between the two when, the protests and occupations were going on. So hopefully this merges relationships.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Jordan or Joshua, would you like to share?
I can follow.
Go ahead.
Okay. in regards to feeling safe, it's been like a gradual experience of kind of seeing how Goucher doesn't really demonstrate much care for its Black student population, and that was really made manifest to me in my freshman year, which was the fall of 2018, and there was a hate crime in which somebody somebody posted, like, somebody spray painted, I believe, in one of our bathroom halls and said, "I'm going to kill all the Black people," or like redacted. And we mobilized the Black Student Union on my campus. That was about October, and all the Black students on campus mobilized pretty quickly to organize protests in order to stand together. And part of the thing that was really disappointing about that preparation process was having the opportunity to speak to upperclassmen to an extent that I hadn't before, and learning that these types of hate crimes, though not always directed against the Goucher community, the Black community at Goucher, there was usually an attack against a marginalized community every year for the last few years with little to no response being done to apprehend the culprits. And I still wonder if, like, we hadn't mobilized the way we had, whether there would have been a genuine, effective response to the person who had committed that hate crime as well. But time went on, and I went on to become the historian of my school's Black Student Union, and I had the opportunity to go through the archives and special collections of my school and documents that were stored regarding the history of the Black Student Union. And it was really interesting to me seeing kind of events that were started by Black people, and then a few years later, the institution would hold a similar event to respect the history of Black people on campus. And most of all, definitely in regards to demands, that was really interesting. Seeing the demands that previous groups of Black student unions had put together, and seeing just how glaringly similar they were in content in regard to just how they weren't being acknowledged. So in terms of improvement, it's really a matter for me of just seeing my institution going from being so reactionary as they are, like them deciding they want to live up to their mission statement of valuing diversity and inclusivity outside of moments of racial crisis, as were demonstrated by this last summer. Fatima, I'm not sure about the others, but I can't hear.
I was muted. I
Just
said
wait for a
thank you
second. I feel like she's talking.
I was just saying, Jordan, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Really quickly, I think everyone gave a lot of testament to what the experience is like. It's important to remember that when you step onto these campuses, don't be afraid to be that community developer at those institutions. I think going to a PWI, being a grad student, you're already kind of siloed because the undergraduate experience is what these institutions are marketing. And I don't want to go to a football game every 2 weeks, but I did find individuals who were people of color and people who weren't, who were able to say, "Did you take that the same way I took it?" And I was like, "Yes, this is the reality of our lives in higher education." So definitely be open to forming community, but always have that guard of who am I letting into my personal community and how are they going to impact my well-being at this institution.
Thank you all for sharing. Just kind of like listening, it sounds very Georgetown-esque. A lot of the times it's like it's difficult to differentiate between like the departments to the administration to the students and where work is being done. And like our administration has a diversity and inclusion, I don't know the titles, and they posted like a newsletter about like their efforts towards something, and their newsletter only featured student efforts. And I'm like, y'all didn't do anything. What's ongoing? Let me know. But with that being said, what you guys are kind of mentioning that I'm hearing is that there are microcosms like in your community where community is developed, and at the forefront is students and Black staff and faculty and things like that. So I just kind of want to hear more about who the players that are involved, like I mentioned earlier, like who are the people specifically that are building community for you? How are they building community? And then also, what are the demands that that community has? So for Georgetown in specific, I feel like in the last year, our demands focused a lot on the needs of Black survivors within our community. And it sounds as though at Goucher, it was a different set of demands that you guys needed to solve. So I just kind of want to give everyone a perspective on what are different demands at different like PWIs.
I would say, so the University of Pittsburgh does a year of, like a theme with a year of, so this year's the year of engagement for the university, which when I saw that email, I was kind of pissed off because my first question was, how are you defining engagement? And, you know, what is engagement to a historically white university that neighbors all these Black and brown communities? So just giving back to, I'm starting to see the university understand its geography within the city of Pittsburgh. So I think one of the things that are on the forefront is, how does the university actually impact the neighborhoods that it surrounds? So there's been like a big push for the university to get heavily involved with its neighboring communities and outreach programs, engagement programs, which, you know, personally, I'm not going to critique right now, but there's some work that needs to be done on whom is leading the initiatives and who is also involved, because I found that oftentimes these predominantly white universities are in a space, but not of the space. So they'll occupy it, but not provide for it. It's kind of like this a la carte lifestyle of where we'll just hang around, but we're not going to give anything back. So with the year of engagement for the university, I'm just thinking moving forward that it's going to be a lot of involvement, which is really funny because it's like, it's a pandemic right now. So did you guys luck up this year? And that's just what I'm seeing from this one specific university. I'm sure it probably is similar across the board and it might be different other places, but that's just one thing I've noticed.
Thank you. Anyone else like to share?
Basically,
I was just asking, like, at your institution, what are the demands of like the Black community, and who are the actual people getting those demands met, or, you know, those needs met?
Okay, so like I said, the past year we were in protesting occupations, and there's a list of demands, and it's really targeted towards, you know, accountability, diversity and inclusion, and it's really pointed towards administration, but you will have people in different departments that are also, you know, seeking for their departments and department heads to really facilitate these changes inside their own being as well. So, for example, we have anti-harassment and hate speech policies because there was a lot of racist graffiti, even like physical, like targeted hate speech towards people. More counselors that represent, you know, the population on campus. And, you know, coming here from my undergrad institution, I was able to go to the counselor center and be like, I would like to speak with a Black woman, which I found like, just like, wow, I can actually do that here. But, you know, more funding for scholarships, money towards a diversity and inclusion program, and just, there's just a whole list of things that need to be done and the administration needs to be accountable for. And it wasn't like they received these demands first, like all willy-nilly, like, okay, we're going to get onto it. You know, there was discourse about, okay, this one's good, but not about this one. And, you know, I'm still not even sure like what the discourse is between, you know, the students who were in the main collective, not again SU, and then, you know, administration. But, you know, they're talking about putting money towards, you know, certain things, tuition freezes that didn't happen, unfortunately. And without aid as an undergraduate, you're paying about $70K here. And, if it just keeps rising, how is that equitable, especially to first generation low income students? So there's a lot of work that has to be done, and it's not all going to happen, at the same time and, starting in 23 days when the semester starts. But we'll see what gets implemented, what gets changed, and who facilitates these changes.
So in your conversations between like the student body and the administration, who facilitates like the actual like writing of your demands and things like that? Is it like a group of students who came together on GroupMe, or like the Black Student Alliance president, or like who's leading the conversation?
So the main collective, from my knowledge, and it is Not Again SU, and it's a lot of BIPOC students into the group. There's graduate students who are also feeding into, the demands. There's faculty that, have been down for the call since day one, helping students. So there's a lot of players into it, and there's a lot of Black organizations on campus. And I don't believe undergrads have like a central like BSU or BSA, but it's a multi-level effort here. And, from undergrads to staff to faculty in different departments throughout the campus. So it's a collective effort, definitely.
Can you guys hear me?
In regard to my school, we've actually like just posted reinstated demands, which covered a breadth of topics, of which supporters, like, we have many, but we have like kind of mounted a new front because on account of like having to work remotely, that has like had an unexpected and kind of unprecedented level of success of just putting out articles for Medium in response to some of the things that we saw being done by administration and how lackluster they were when it came to addressing what was really need to be addressed within the Gaucho Black community. So we like because there's like 8 of us in our Black Student Union. We just had different fields that we wanted to cover in regards to our own experiences, and we all brought it together and we were able to hammer out a list of demands that covered a breadth of topics. Like, my specialty was education because my school has a race, power, and perspective requirement that is a part of the Commons curriculum that you need to graduate. And we use a certain site, and when you access the site, you can see it all, like your requirements staggered down. And one thing I've noticed in the time that I've been there is that under the race, power, and perspective requirement, it's only one specific designated class, and there's a last year experience requirement. And I thought, is this, for like 2 years, I've been like, is this all there is to the race, power, and perspective requirement? It was this year that I finally actually went to the website and saw what it actually entailed. And what I noticed is that it was incorporated into our first year experiences, which is really supposed to get us integrated into the college as a whole. Our study abroad requirement, which is a mandatory requirement, and that's supposed to have you engaged. The last year experience, which is kind of just in terms of description, the class, and there's one other aspect that's escaping my mind right now. But I just found it really interesting. I was like, do other people really know what the full breadth of this race, power, and perspective requirement is, and why is it that you can take one class and be done with this requirement, in contrast to something like a language course, which you're expected to take 10 credits of, and a half, unlike schools that usually do a year and just kind of let you drop it. You can do, because my issue was mainly the fact that like I had to live every day with my race. I'm not necessarily going to need to speak French every day to get by, especially when I'm living here. So those are like just some of the things that we took into account. Like, we also wanted to, and it was also the fact of the matter of like, it was our demands touch upon that aura of reactive the administration demonstrates time and again. And we were essentially saying we need our the black people who put their efforts forth and put together these projects to make you look good. We need them to be recognized just as much as we recognize these other people on the campus for their own respective ambitions.
Thank you.
I will close it out again. I think having
We gotta reverse it the next time.
It works for me. Listen, I like to put a for everybody. I think being able to, I've worked at Georgetown with some of the undergraduate students before, and even at the University of Florida. It's important to make sure that they are skilled. Key word of the day is skilled. Skilled professionals who are able to help students strategically voice their concerns, right? There's always going to be a middle agent. You have your students, you have that fine layer of professionals, and then you have higher administration. You need to have people in that middle ground who can tell a student, okay, you experience X, Y, and Z. This is that person who's over that experience control at this institution. We need to get that concern to that person without pissing them off, because then we start back at one again. I was in a position where I advised Black students, and our white supervisor made a comment about a process being ghetto. And I was like, you can't really, to me, it doesn't matter because that word, but if you are in a position of power at an institution where students are learning and their student staff, you have to be very selective about the words that you use because it impacts their experience and their vision of who you are. So it's bringing that person to the side and say, ooh, next staff meeting, don't say that no more. So I think being able to advocate for your students both when they need you to and when they don't see you doing it, or when they don't expect it, or when they don't even see it, just continuously having professionals who can eye things and say, I'm going to bring this to someone's attention because the students will bring it to you eventually.
I love that. That's definitely where I'm at with Georgetown. I scream up and down, like, we pay y'all. Like, we pay y'all. I'm not trying to learn. I'm trying to make my website. Go find somebody. That's how I feel. So just tying together some things I heard. It seems as though, like, the generation before us, it always felt like they would just, or before us, people in institutions, some of y'all older than me, I'm like the baby of the group, but before it was like kind of throwing a bone, like, you know, you just get a bone here, get a bone there. Now it seems as though there's like a level playing field of awareness, and that has been the change, but there's not any adaptation towards like personal action. And like, it just doesn't seem like these institutions adapt, period. Like, they get information and sit on it, or get information and figure out how not to have to handle it. So one question I was going to bring, just basically on this thing of adaptation, a lot of universities had to figure their stuff out real quick when it came to COVID. And it was very embarrassing on a lot of schools' parts. And so I wanted to ask you guys, how was your transition to virtual learning, virtual school, and things like that? Because I know a lot of people are saying, like, for those who are now entering institutions, that's kind of what they have to work on. Like, how quickly were those schools helping you? Were they helping students of color? Were they helping first generation students? Things like that.
I will kick us off so I don't have to go this time. My last position was at a community college, which we should give more recognition to community colleges for supporting students of color. Questions that they were talking about during COVID release, you really release students to go home. What about those students who can't access education via technology? What can we do to bridge those gaps? I think larger institutions, specifically predominantly white institutions, don't ask the question, or didn't ask the question of, what does remote learning look like for our students who are in need? And oftentimes those students who are in need are students of color, due to the fact that the institution hasn't adapted to provide the resources while they were on campus to begin with. So in my job, they had the right mentality. In my grad program, it was all over the place. I think it was important that students of color spoke up a lot, and they talked about kind of what impeded them on completing that semester. And so that's why we have things like, what's the final grade going to look like for COVID spring? How do we talk about credits from COVID spring or COVID spring? What is the impact on all of these students? And yes, it's still encompassing every student, but at least we were in a place that we were talking about all students and not just our core students, which are predominantly white students. It was a conversation of, okay, they're going to have to do it from home if they can, but what are we going to do if they can't in the meantime? So it was a hybrid of, we don't know what we're doing, but we know what our roles are as institutions or as an institution, and we're going to make it up as we go. But it was important, and if anybody here needs this takeaway, push your students to speak directly out. Because in these moments, when it's a high peak, high stress situation, the professional is really asked to just jump on board and make stuff work. And stuff wasn't the word I was looking for. But in these moments, push your students, push your undergraduate students, push your new students to say what it is they need in this moment, because that is the only way you distract administrators' minds from what they were currently on or what paths COVID had taken them on. So when it go left, the right thing to do is push your students and tell them, vocalize what it is that you need so we can deliver it to you as soon as possible.
Okay. Would anyone else like to add?
I would say from a university level, same thing. Pitt, they responded pretty quickly, efficiently with, getting information out there and whatnot. But I mean, I know that's in regards to just making sure that money is good. So, but from my personal experiences, my department, my faculty was just like, if we're gonna be honest, they was like, yo, we're not gonna work, so we're not expecting you to work. Like really at all. They're just like my advisor was like, I don't feel like reading this, and I know you don't feel like writing it. We'll find some middle ground because this is something that no one has ever dealt with before. So I would say, and I think that goes with having faculty who look like you and understand you and come from the type of same places and who are just going to be real with you and be like, listen, this is a pandemic. I'm not grading this paper because I don't feel like it. And it was just that level of honesty and forwardness that helped all of us students who were just like, oh, like, you get the nice worded email that says one thing, but then you get that phone call that's like, don't even worry about that. We good. You got an A. And it's like, oh, okay. But it's like, these are practices that we know that are on different levels with different individuals within the university that we don't hear about. So finally, we're getting a little bit of, getting a little bit of love on that end of, saying that you're getting a leeway with getting away with certain things. But from the virtual end, because I know this fall, all my courses will be online. So like professors have been sending out information on a regular talking about, hey, I know class is scheduled for this long, but this Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So this is how we're going to do it. And asking us, what are you guys okay with? Well, how do you learn? Which is like a testament to them being culturally responsive in a place of saying like, I need to learn how my students learn right now, instead of saying like, this is what it's going to be. But I think that's from only a specific group of individuals within the school. And it's not like this school-wide practice, which I think if the whole university buys into, it could be helpful to everyone in the long run.
Yeah, I resonated a lot with that, because being a part of like Georgetown systems is very business. It was very business as casual. And I had to let them know, I'm trying to eat, make money, pass my classes, survive, like go to therapy. I don't really care about a form that you need for us to not have shows this school year. Like it doesn't matter anymore. But thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else would like to share about their specific school COVID experience?
I'll say that here at Syracuse, we got a mixed bag. The like really fast shift to online this past semester, it was rough because, it's something that, came out of nowhere. And, I was taking, seminar classes that were more applied, like intermediate stats. And I was taking a qualitative methods course where I was working on a project, like interviewing, participant observation. And so like, stuff got ruined trying to learn stats online when Blackboard Collaborate wasn't working, and so we had to resort to like YouTube tutorials. And even for me, so in that class we use the statistical package data, and I personally don't have my own license on my computer, so I would do like remote access, or I would go to the lab on campus, which we couldn't use to use SATA. And my laptop was not working well with the remote access at first, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am going to not do well in this class now if I can't access data. You know, graduate students, we make money, but it's not the best money all the time. You know, we have other bills and other things we need to put our money to. But, you know, fortunately, I figured out the problem with my laptop and everything. But it's things like that that, you know, aren't considered. Like, first of all, do students even have laptops? Like, I know students who, in graduate programs who didn't have internet at their houses. And so now walking into this semester, me personally, all my classes are online because I specifically chose that. But, you know, you have some departments or, you know, some courses and departments that are like every meeting is in person. And I'm like, you know, that's not equitable at all. Like it's unrealistic. And, you know, it's just going to be a mess. And I really wish that it was more considerate at this point. And from my knowledge, I thought everything was supposed to be like hybrid. So if you weren't able to make it to class, but I don't know what's shifting because everything is starting to change like every so days. So we're never in the loop of everything. But I know my classes will be online. I've had to come to terms with that and create a space for myself inside my apartment, which isn't the biggest, meaning don't work inside of your room, make a space in the living room, you know, even though that's your relaxation spot as well. But when push comes to shove, we have to work with what we got.
Fatima, I think you're muted.
Anyone else? You can go ahead and add anything you guys would like to say here talking about that.
I can close this part out in the sense that there was some stuff that Andrea touched upon that I very much also had to deal with. And one of the things, honestly, I didn't struggle too much course wise because I was taking classes that I really liked, especially like an African American literature seminar on African American literature and a class to learn how to become a tutor in a writing center. But in terms of the transition to virtual learning, to say the part was hardest part was probably like the psychological separation that came with being back at home and taking fully fledged classes. Like when I go to school, because I go to school, Goucher's in Baltimore, Maryland, and when I go there, I leave my PS4 here in New York. So it's very easy to kind of like psychically distance myself and like have that workspace while I'm at school, and that was something that because it was like now I'm in the middle of a pandemic and I'm kind of freaking out and I'm doing classwork. My PS4 is sitting upstairs and it's just like, what am I doing here? But in terms of like easing that transition, I think it's a matter of like, I think it really is kind of dependent on like having genuine communications and just kind of a take degree of realism to the situation in the sense that everybody kind of has to acknowledge instead of everybody saying, oh, okay, this is a pandemic, let's make the best of this. They say, okay, this is a pandemic. Let's just find a way to make this work so we can kind of accommodate everybody. And that could mean just shifted, like sliding. I saw a lot of schools kind of, or even just individual classes sliding their grading scales to just be like, oh, A is like you want an A, you get like A is a 80 to 100 now, or B is like a 60 to an 80 or a 79, like that type of stuff, and figuring out ways to accommodate because I'm focusing sometimes, especially reading certain books. I'm just like, but I definitely recognize other people struggling, and I recognized why they were struggling. So I'd say just finding ways, even if just individually to accommodate the students, that would be what I would recommend when it comes to advancing to this next semester of online, mostly remote work.
Did anyone want to add to that? I was just going to say that the schools that expect, just from my Georgetown perspective, speak from my Georgetown perspective, Georgetown is very married just to white supremacy and capitalism. That's just what I've realized. These institutions are married to money. Like they will do anything to get a dollar. And that's something that I think I'd like to put out there if there are any people who are interested in like going to a PWI from the undergraduate perspective. Like, you are going to come and think like you're paying them and that's all that matters, but they literally do not care. They will take things from you left and right and leave you homeless and confused, not give you information, and then just to make it seem as though like we're trying our hardest. And I'm like, okay, I could do your job better, but that's okay. So the last question I have for you all is, what is one thing that you've learned as a Black student at a PWI that you feel has helped you on your overall journey, a long life journey or purpose and destiny?
I can steal this one and then just sit back. I have learned that once you take it and run, don't stop, continue to push, continue to go through any involvement, any program, any degree that you want. Don't stop, because the moment that you think things have become easier or you've made it, no, that's just only half the battle. So if you attend the PWI, take every opportunity you can, meet any professionals that look like you, that make you feel validated in that experience, and don't drop that baton, because very few people get the opportunity to hold it. And that's all I got on that one. So.
One thing
I
for
can
me.
follow.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I don't really want to be excessively pessimistic, but it's just like it's a lesson I've had to learn for years, and something that kind of made itself manifest in my time is like when somebody shows you who they are, listen to them, in the sense that it's I'd say it's probable that as a Black student at the PWI, you're going to meet other Black students who share your experience, and you will be able to gel with and be able to have the most fun with. You'll be able to do some type of work to like maybe challenge the administration and get stuff done for the betterment of Black students that you're currently attending the school with, but also Black students who are also going to go be attending that same school in the future and won't have to deal with that same mess. But then every now and then there's going to be people who just aren't really like giving everything to it. And it's always okay, and I would always recommend extending grace. But like when it gets to a point where you say to yourself, would it be better if we replace this, keep this person here and continue to hope for something that they have not demonstrated yet? Or would it be better to say like, and trust somebody else who has shown more drive to this commitment? Like, is it better to like give them a chance to do what this other person has not? Something I've taken very seriously, a quote I've taken very seriously in the last few months was when Angela Davis says, "I don't really want to reach the finish line with everybody," and I think that's the reality of like college life that you kind of have to get used to, in the sense that not everybody's going to be really moving the same way that you do.
True.
Coming up with one thing was really hard, but just adding on that, having your community, but never invalidating your feelings with what's ever happened to you. So if you have been gaslighted, if you have been affected by, anything on campus that makes you feel like you were harmed or even traumatized you, it's real. Don't invalidate it. Don't tell yourself that you're being overdramatic. But to also add on to that, know your limits within these spaces. So if you feel like it's not a safe space for you, then it's not the end of the world, and other options will arise. And Not saying it's always an easy transition, for undergrads, for example, to transfer to other schools or even, graduate student, but you have to know when a place is not safe for you, mentally, emotionally, or even physically at some of these PWIs, and that's reality. But just to, add one more thing back to community, for me personally, without establishing the community that I did this year, I don't know how my first year would have went. And that means, other Black graduate students that I've came in contact with in classes, like Black women faculty members have been holding me down since day one. And, I'm really appreciative of those individuals because there were times where I was like, I'm ready to pack my bags and quit. I don't belong here. I'm not supposed to be here. But just the reassurance from those who are either further on in their programs or faculty who have felt the same in their own programs is really, I don't even know the adjective, but it just feels good. But you also have to know when it's time to pull yourself out of these spaces as well.
Can I ask you to repeat the question just so I can make sure?
You got it.
Yeah.
So what is one thing you've learned as a Black student at a PWI that you feel has helped you on your journey?
Okay. And I think my perspective and outlook on this is a little bit different because I also have a work history of working. I took some time in between school. So I look at PWIs just not as universities. Like the spaces that I go to, even in work outside of universities, are predominantly white institutions. But I will say when you are in these predominantly white spaces, my mindset and what I've learned is that my Blackness is kind of a fugitive act. Like me being Black in that space is fugitive and I move as such. And that's one thing I had to learn and understand in that space is it's taught me how to maneuver a lot and how to disrupt and make changes because they want you to stay silent, but my Blackness is so loud. So it's like, I might as well just shake the room if I'm here. And that's what it's like. I'm very intentional and that's what it's taught me to be. But it's also allowed me to realize that the changes that I make or I want to implement at this level essentially are not for me in the long run. Like, I want to change research practices and, I want to at the university and the things I want to read and learn about, and I could push for it all I want, but I might not be a student here when it finally happens. So one thing I would always say is what it's taught me is know that what you're doing essentially isn't for yourself when you're at these PWIs. Like there were individuals before you that got the school to that point, and now you're going to have to push to change some policies and things, but it's going to be for the students that come after you. So that instant gratification is not a real thing. So just understand you're being a bridge builder in this space. Your impact is going to be long-term in this, essentially.
Thank you. Those were beautiful words for us to close on as well. Thank you all for taking this time to have this conversation with us, and I'm waiting to see if Erica's going to come back on and tell me what we're going to do with the 10 minutes.
That was great. Thank y'all so much. I know that everyone who was able to hop into this session definitely took. Is there anything else anyone wants to add at all? That was just great. Thank you, Fatima, for moderating, and thank you all for, of course, being here. What's up, Josh?
And this was something I read, not as pessimistic, but it's like definitely this time, and it's very irritating. Some of these administrations, especially at the PWIs, are going to be like, oh, we want to hear what Black students have to say. And it's like, all that listening is cute, but it's like, the question remains is like, are you going to do something about it? So when it gets to that point where it feels very grating, don't be afraid to tap out sometimes for your own personal rest, because they're not paying you to do this research and provide your experiences and more to the point, them even asking you to do that actually demonstrates a lot of negligence on the administration's behalf, which is even more incriminating against them. So sometimes it's a matter of like just dropping your demands and finding ways to reinforce them. But it's like they're not paying you for the work that they're doing. So keep that in mind. I think keeping that in mind is something important to have, like, as you're proceeding to find out ways to hold your own administrations accountable.
I agree, because a lot of times they say they're listening, and okay, you're listening, but what are you actually doing with what you're hearing? And as students, I commend y'all continue to do this fight, because it's frustrating to continue to hear, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but they don't actually do it. But I see that you all are continuing to come with that fight and continue to try and shake the room, because it's important, and you're paying these people's salary. Realistically, if all of y'all didn't want to be here, we wouldn't be here working. So they have to listen. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what this project is about. Because if you're not going to listen, then we're not going to give our money to you. And as students, it's very important that you have that power and know that power that you have, because it really all belongs to y'all. And like I said, I just commend y'all for being here, sharing this space, and giving ways for other people that are listening to organize as well, because y'all are leaders in y'all community, and it's appreciated, and I respect it. So once again, I thank you. I thank you for showing up, and I thank you for being amazing, standing in your Blackness and not bowing down, because I see it, and trust me, a lot of other people see it, and it's respected, like I said before. So once again, thank you. And thank you, Fatima, for moderating, like I said. For everyone else, the next session isn't until 2:45. Thank you, Jordan. But if you go into the stage, I'm going to just play some music, probably just talk a little bit about why I started Black at PWI. And the next session is going to be with faculty. So you get to hear how faculty are dealing with being Black at their predominantly white institutions. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.